So first of all, good morning to everyone and to all of you. Thank you. So can I operate slide from here?
Yeah, you have to operate from here.
Okay.
Then you talk in this one.
Okay. Anyway, so the title is about translation traditions of Buddhist text. Okay. So I have prepared some slides here. So I try to highlight some concepts in Tibetan translations. How the ancient those translators do translations based on some concepts, right? So for that, first you must have to understand the essence of the Buddha's teachings, how the Buddha's words, Buddha's teachings, when Buddha taught the teaching, how that language, the Buddha's words works. Is that works as the ordinary people do conversation or something different from that? We have to know that one. And also we have to know
Now you speak. No, speak.
is it audible?
Yes, no.
Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. So the translation traditions of Buddhist text. So I'm going on to the next slide from here. So first you have to understand the transmissions. So when you are translating from the source text, right, to the target one, you are transmitting. Actually, the transmitting what? You are transmitting the sense, right? So when we consider the sense itself have a different levels, okay? How much profundity in that sense you have to measure. According to that, you have to grasp the meaning from the source text to the target one. So before that, you have to know when one speak or when one narrate, whether it is a story or the profound meaning of the philosophical text or scripture, you have to understand what it exactly transmit there, right? So for that reason, first we are going to understand what actually the transmissions works there when Buddha teachings. Okay, so here transmission of Buddha Vachan. So Buddha Vachan, Buddha's teaching. So I try to make this in this way diagram. Buddha Vachan, Agam. So it is very important to understand here the Agam, right? And Agam, these words actually we use in both in Ved, right? Ved and Buddhist teachings. Agam. Agam, it's when you try to find its translations from the online tools like dictionaries, right? Maybe I'm not sure all the good dictionaries, but in the online when you translate the Agam, usually it gives the scriptures like that, right? Scripture, doctrine, something like that. Actually the Agam itself doesn't have that complete meaning when you say the doctrine and scriptures like this, Agam, right? Agam must have the meaning of oral transmission. Agam. In Tibetan we translate it as a lung, Agam. Agam must have the sense of oral transmission. There must be the oral transmission in the sense of Agam, in the meaning of Agam, right? So Agam. So when the Buddha's teachings, actually that teaching becomes the Agam. That is considered as a Agam. Agam means the transmission of voice, a sound from the Buddha. Okay, so Agam, and that we divide that into the two, oral transmission and literal transmissions. I will come to that point again later. Okay, oral transmissions. So Agam, oral transmission, and then from long transmission and close transmission. These two actually explained from the Tibetan context. Okay, and also it's there in the Nalanda master's description also. Okay, so literal transmission. So literal transmission, when we consider the literal transmission, you find there 64 such languages during the Buddha's time. 64 languages, 64, and sometimes we, in Tibetan context, translating from the Lalita Geshe Lungtok, in Tibetan we call Geshe Lungtok Sutra, Lalita, which is called something Lalita Sutra, something like. So in which they are mentioned 64 languages, and sometimes we count 65. There are two different ways, 65. So literal transmission comes when the Buddha passed away after 1 year, okay, sometimes we call that after 3 years, something that. And the very first, the literal transmission they do, okay, when from the Sri Lanka, right, first council or Buddha's council happened, and from that they put it onto the palm leaves. At that, during that time there is no paper, right, palm leaves, and in this way they transmit literal transmissions from there, and then it separate to the different countries. But thing is that when they transmit to the literal way, in the literal way, so they translate what we usually today call it's a Pali, right? They transmit in the Pali. So Pali itself have a much controversy. It does it mean name for the language, or does it name for some duration? So we have to understand it this first, right? But in the today's context, we call that Pali means to maintain, palna, something like we scholars have described that, to palna, to maintain or to take care about the Buddha's teachings, right? To preserve, something that meanings comes from the Pali. This is what today described, okay, Pali. And another one terms Pali, that means Prakritic language. During that time, so 64 languages are there at the Buddha's time, okay, when they taught. So thing is that when Buddha teaches, right, doesn't use the particular language, okay. So when Buddha teaches the teaching, so because of the different mentality and disposition of the audience mind, they understand, they hear the Buddha's teaching in their own languages. So this is I'm going to show the reference from that one. So here Buddhacharya Parani Dharana Raja in the Buddha Vadasaka Sutra. In this sutra they are mentioned in the languages of gods, nagas and yakshas, in the languages of Gandharvas and humans, in whatever sounds exist among all beings. I teach the Dharma in all languages. So this is the citation from the sutra, okay, and its commentary again by the Arya Nagarjuna's commentary on the Buddhacharya. So Buddhacharya Parani, this one, it states, okay, it states there, to gods in divine language, to nagas, yakshas, Gandharvas and humans in their respective languages, and so forth. In brief, to all beings in whatever sounds exist, teaching the sublime Dharma to each individually in their own way until awakening. So from this we have to understand that when Buddha teaches, right, so the listeners, they hear the voice in their own different languages. So this is same again with the Veda. So Ved in Tibetan context, actually in the description of the tenet systems, okay, tenet, in which they are defined, so Ved and Buddhavachan, both are considered as divide of Aphoa. There is no Aphoa. Buddhavachan and Veda doesn't have Aphoa. It doesn't work according to the Aphoa negation. So when you say table, right, that doesn't mean other than the table. It doesn't mean other than table. So this is what we use. Our languages works in that way. When we use the terms, it always there have a Aphoa in opposite. But Ved and Buddha's teachings, those enlightened beings, when they teaches, right, because of their in power, omniscient mental power, their voice, what we call their voice, doesn't works in Aphowa. Okay, people understand from their own different languages. That is the difference. Okay, so because of that reason, when this literal transmission happened after the Buddha passed, their conflict comes, because those who have heard in their own languages, when they compile, right, they don't find the one specific language to transmit that literally. Because of that reason, when they transmit, some have transmitted there in Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar, Burma, in their own script. But the sound remain the same Pali, what we call Pali, same. But the scripts are different. If they are already the different one, then there must be the different one for that literal translation, right? Literal transmission. But they don't find that later. And even another reason is that even when they make council, so those arhats, that great realized monks, reciting the Buddha Vachan, right? And when they are reciting the Buddha Vachan, they are going to recite in their languages. They don't come one language, right? Some recite in the Magadh, some recite in the Prakritic and our Vamsha, Pisha's language, some different languages. Okay, because they recite, they memorize in their own languages. Because when Buddha taught, they heard in their own languages. Because of that reason, they recite in their own language. And this is again one reason that when Buddha taught, everyone doesn't hear the one language. They can hear in their own different languages. Because Buddha's voice and with they doesn't have a function of Aphowa. Right? So because of that reason, this is just two citation reference I quote here, and from the book one printed in the Nalanda University, okay, where in Tibetan I translate here and quote here. Okay, so here during that time, Buddha, those listeners, okay, according to the Lalita the Sutra, so there 24 to 25 languages are there. Those who come to the Buddha and listen teachings, they involve something, the people who understand these different languages. So because of that reason, we say that Buddha taught, but academically today we say that how many languages Buddha know, right? So some says that Buddha knows more than 64 languages. This is what mentioned in the sutra. But actually it doesn't mean that one. It means, it shows that during that time, the peoples who can speak in these languages, different 64 languages, but Buddha taught in only one voice. There are many citations from there. Okay, so this is one thing. So when from that reason, then meaning of agama comes. Agama means that now. Okay, so agam. If when we make a speech, that doesn't become a agam. That doesn't become agam. So agam has that meaning. Okay, so you have to understand agam. Do you understand that agam? Agam must have the voice which does not have a proper functionality of Aphowa. Okay, so that but after that the practitioners try to carry that agam in the sense of oral transmissions, right, to keep that. So because of that reason, Acharya Vasubandhu have clearly mentioned in Abhidharma Kosh, right, to practice the dharma there are only two ways: reciting the dharma prayers, and on the base of that one you have to practice and then cultivate your inner mental cultivations. You have to realize. So only these two. The mental realization depends on the oral transmission again, right? And oral transmission, agam again depends on hearing from the previous masters. Suppose you are reciting one text, okay, if you don't hear that text from your spiritual master voice, even if you don't hear from your spiritual master, though you recite that text, even you have memorized that text, right? Still, that doesn't become a dharma practiced. Authentically speaking, that doesn't become a dharma practice. Of course, yes, you will have some accumulation or merit by that recitations, but it still doesn't become a dharma, because it is lack of oral transmission. But it doesn't mean that you don't accumulating the dharma virtue. You are accumulating virtue. Because of that, you will have some good result, right? Happiness. But that doesn't become a dharma practice. So this is one point again. So because it doesn't become a agam, to make a agam, we seek transmission, oral transmission with the transmission from the spiritual masters. That is called agam. Okay. So from that, here comes the oral transmission, and literal transmission comes later, right? During the literal transmission happens, then this question comes, whether the Buddha teach in different language or not, if there are different languages, how many languages the Buddha know. This question arises at that time. Okay, and many scholars and those Nalanda masters conclude that Buddha's teaching doesn't have apova, teaches in one direction, one voice, but audience understand in their own different languages. So that is called agam. Okay, transmission. Okay, so oral transmission, literal transmission is in 4 languages. There comes the transmission in Pali, right, in different own script, right, in different script. And after that, then I highlight here Pali, Sanskrit, Chinese, Tibetan. Okay, in this way it comes, translation. Okay, so translation and transmission. So this is what I am saying, try to saying the transmission, how the transmission happens. Okay, here again one citation from the Vinayaka Sudharkavastu of the Nobel Stavira school. There are 18 schools in the Vibhashika. There are 2 divisions, Mahasangika and Stavira. From the Stavira schools, it states that once when the teacher, here it means Buddha, when the teacher was still alive, 2 Brahmins approach, Dangsong, we call that Dangsong. Actually, even you check from the Nalanda masters, those great masters are actually the Brahmins. Nagarjuna is Brahman, and Dharmakirti, right, and Chandrakirti, they are Brahmins actually. Okay, yes. So when you are going to define the Brahman, right, according to the Vedic understanding, so there is a many different context. I am not go through that one. Okay, then 2 Brahmins approach the Buddha and propose that in the future, to preserve all the Buddha's teachings correctly, they should be compiled and preserved in a single language. So those 2 Brahmins proposed to the Buddha when Buddha was still present, right? However, the Buddha did not approve, instructing instead that they should be composed and spread in the languages of each region. There is a very big reason for this one. Okay, region. Therefore, so from that one can conclude, therefore Buddha did not focus primarily on language, but taught considering that the meaning of the Dharma would be easily understandable to the audience, easily understood and comprehensible in each person's own language. So because of that reason, Buddha does not propose to do translation in one language. Okay, so from that reason, every languages Buddha's teachings can be done and translate in any languages, and the main purpose should be understandable to them. So this is how comes the Buddha's teaching itself, when the very beginning of the meaning of agam itself, when Buddha teaches, right, they understand in their languages. Buddha teach in one way. Because of that reason, Buddha rejected at that time. Okay, yeah, this reason. So rejecting means, it doesn't mean that you should not do this in Sanskrit, but there is a one citation from the Pali text. Usually they means for the sutra. So Buddha, so as per my understanding, as I read from the Tibetan, again Buddha doesn't oppose the transmission into the Sanskrit. Okay, also acceptable. Sanskrit in Tibetan translation we call do. Do means something well designed, well versed, okay, well compiled, something like that. Sanskrit. Well compiled means you carry the profundity of meaning, essence of meaning, something in a very systematic and compiled one. That is called sutra, actually, literal mean, sutra. Okay, when you sutra, usually you find sutra in a stanza, not in a prose writing. Okay, so sutra means, actually in Tibetan translation is very accurately translated there, do. Do means something that compiled together. You don't have to use many words to represent the profundity of meaning, right? Compile one and you make that. So this works very accurately to the Sanskrit. So because of that reason, Sanskrit become a very popular, and it is also used by those ancient Nalanda masters, right, to preserve the Buddha's teachings. Especially this works very proudly in the Mahayana tradition. Okay, yes, to compile. It doesn't mean they're rejecting. Okay, and here now, so the same theme, transmission of Buddha Vajan. So there are two lineage of transmissions. Okay, so again here, when transmissions, there are two lineage of transmissions. In Tibetan, I just Ringyu and Nyegyu highlight here. So first I am going to the Ringyu, the long lineage. So long lineage, we have to first we must credit that to the Buddha, right? So when we are talking about the Buddha's teachings, Buddha is the first here. It's Buddha, and after that, so here, according to the Lalita Vistara, right? During the time of the Lord Buddha, 64 different types of the scripts were prevalent in the world. So this is talking about in the world. Okay, world, the translation of in Tibetan Zambuling. Zambuling, we call that. Zambu in the ancient India. Okay, India means all this Pakistan, Afghanistan, all the Nepal, all these are included during that time. That is called Zambuling in Tibetan. Okay, and that is called, and which is divided as the south direction. Okay, and west direction it is American that. But south include, that's all, this one is India. What we call India, during that time there is no such term India, right? So this is Zambuling, which is usually the term Zambuling in Tibetan, which comes from the Jambudip, something like that. Jambudip, something like that. That sound comes in the Tibetan translation for Zambuling, which is regarded as the all this territory. Okay, so in that, world means that one, but this is the different translation. You should understand world. You should not consider here world means all that western and western. Okay, not that one. Here world should be that Zambuling. Okay, so within that area, within that territory during Buddha's time, usually the people talk in these 64 different languages are exist there during that time in this locality. Okay, and those who came from these different territories, they can understand Buddha's teachings in their own languages, 64 languages. So this is what mentioned here. These are those languages. Okay, so already there in the Tibetan actually. So I try to translate them in the so here Brahmi script, numerical script, Anga script, and there and Kharoshti script. So all these are there, right? So different scripts are there. There are total 64. All these are mentioned. Okay, I quote this from the one of the texts from the Nalanda University. They already done this work, and I correct from there. Okay, so you will find, I will upload this and you can read. Okay, so you will find. So these are the 64 different scripts, languages during the Buddha's time teachings, right? And the Buddha's teaching itself doesn't have a specific script. No, you don't find. because Buddha's teaching doesn't have that functionality of apoa, right? So there is not that. So this one. So from this now transmission. So this is the sum of those list of the Pandits, those who went to Tibet from India. So we count here something. I count here 80 something. This is in one. So here list of the Indian Pandits who reached Tibet according to the catalogue of this one here. This one, Shuchen Sultim. Okay, Shuchen Sultim. This is the Tibetan name, Shuchen Sultim Rinchen Tengyur Collections. Tengyur Collections, the collection of the Buddha's commentary, in which compiled by one of the proofreader. Shuchen means proofreader, something like that. Actually, also the translator, okay, Shuchen. His name is Sultim Rinchen. He compiled those Indian masters, right, Pandits who came to Tibet. Okay, so until now, when searching from this translated text, we find something 80, more than 80 somethings. So I put all those 80 here. Okay, all those 80 here. So Buddhapal, Prajapal, right, Shadrakara, Varma, all these are Sanskrit names, Indian names, exactly. Okay, so these are those Indian Pandits who came to Tibet during that centuries, beginning from the 7th century, right? Okay, so here until here. So there are 3 slides, all their names. There are total 81, 82. Okay, they are mentioned 82. Okay. So these are the here, Vanaratna. So last one. So these are the Indian Pandits who came to Tibet. Okay. So this shows that the long transmissions. So Buddha teachings, from that then teaching to the Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara in this way, and then through the teachings of the Indian Pandits, right? In this way, long transmission then come to the Tibet. There is a lineage, long transmission. Okay, one after one. So there must have a transmission, oral transmission. Otherwise, one cannot have the virtue of preserving dharma, right? It doesn't become a practice of dharma if there is no oral transmission. So to keep that, and these are the recorded in the text. After that, if you go in detail, right, in which year these Pandits exist, you can go refer in detail. But these are the only names. Okay, in this way, long transmission happens. Okay. So now the transmission of Buddha Vachan, I will come to the translation later. Okay, so the 2 lineage of transmissions occur. Transmissions. So here, so this is based on the long lineage of transmissions have done, right? I cited that Pandits and all these things, right? Through that transmission comes. So close lineage, close transmission. This is a very unique one. You have to understand. So here, in our in the Gelug traditional monastery, so we do the close lineage of transmission in this way. Gelug traditional Mahamudra, Gelug tradition of Mahamudra. So actually it is related with the Tantra text, Mahamudra, Gelug tradition of Mahamudra. It's a one text. Okay, Geden Lekshe. We call them Tibetan Geden Lekshe. So these have been oral transmission first from the Buddha, then Manjushri, okay, then Rinpoche, the one who founded the Gelug monastery. In this way, from Manjushri to the Rinpoche. So Manjushri, it is called that Tsongkhapa also said. So he is a very great yogi. There are many yogis also happen in Tibet also, right? In India also there are many yogis. Today we can hardly find, right, those yogis. When they come to the high realization of meditations, those tantric, they can directly have audience with the deities. Okay, and from that they get their transmission again. So these deities already have, so like a Manjushri or Lokeshwaras, they have already get those transmission directly from the Buddha during the Buddha's times. Okay, so when those high realized persons, right, when they have audience with those deities, then they have a very good opportunity to get that transmission from them also, from deities. So this is what we call close transmission. Okay, so Tsongkhapa get that oral transmission, okay, after, when having the direct audience with the Manjushri deity, okay, Manjushri. From that, so otherwise there will be include many centuries, right, centuries, yeah. So in this way the close transmission happens, okay, so close transmission. And Jerumbache transmitted that to the Togden Jambik Gyalso and Togden Jambik Gyalso. These are the Tibetan yogis, okay, so these are the Tibetan names. And then Baso Chugi Gyalsen, and then Baso Chugi Gyalsen to the Drupchen Chugi Dorje. So this is a very great yogi. Actually, when he passed away, his body becomes small, rainbow body. What we call that? Jalu. In Tibetan we call those who have very great practitioners. When they pass away, usually their bodies become scrum in one, small, they become small, and finally small, then they vanished. But today, such yogis are hardly find, right? Some 2, 3, 5 years before, there one yogi in Tibet happens. Actually, it was a nun yogi, yogini. So his body becomes, yes, this picture is even available in online today, right? Only this one. So body will become that one, this yoginis. So his body actually totally vanished in this way, and totally vanished. These are not amazing, right? So this in the ancient times, so such great yogis are in India and Tibet. There are many such yogis. Some yogis even we don't understand, we don't know. They have spent their whole life in ascetic in the forest, and in the forest itself they try to isolate from the common ordinary people, and they vanish there itself. We don't know, they don't let know to the ordinary one even. So such yogis are there. So there are many yogis, right? So he is such one. So his transmission, so there in this between there are 300 years gapped. 300 years gapped, he passed away, right? Totally passed away, and that transmission, the oral transmission of that Mahamudra is lost. Transmission break, right? After that, so again one yogi, Ogyen Lobsang Tudrup, so he get transmission from him through the dream. Is it possible to have some knowledge in the dream? Yes, it is possible. Even it is today accept that great scientist, right? Some scientists, Albert Einstein, another one name, the one who Graham Bell, who invent the phone. What's his name?
Graham Bell.
Yes, Graham Bell.
Graham Bell.
Yeah, he get actually those in his sleep, right? So in sleep, there's a 3 levels of sleep. If you pray well and ask, sometimes you get answer in your sleep, right? This is possible. You get answer in the not very deep sleep, and even very not very fresh one, the middle one. At that moment, usually your mind become very creative at that moment, right? Where you get the answer sometime, and when you wake up, oh, I remember a very creative one, then you're going to note down that one. So in dreams also sometimes you have very benefit. So in this way, so Ogyen Lobsang he dreamed that yogi in his dream, and he get transmission in his dream of that Mahamudra. Okay, so this happened after 300 years, and then he gave to the him, and still now it is exist like that. So this is what we call a close lineage of transmission, close transmissions. To have a close transmission, you don't have to go into past, right? You have to practice, right? And when you have some levels of that realizations, you can directly audience with those deities. Okay, like there are many deities, right? In Buddhist deities and in many different deities here. So if you practice, suppose Saraswati, right? Saraswati. If you pray Saraswati and Saraswati, if you have really deep devotion inside you and do the practice routine, right? May have chance, may opportunity, you can have a direct audience. Once you have a direct audience, then you can listen those vachans, Veda directly. You will have. And once you have that, right, transmission directly, then you know you will have that siddhis directly from that, right? You don't have to struggle more. Then you can practice, right, in that way, then you will have siddhis and these things. So this is what we call the close lineage transmission. So these are two transmissions. If you got the long transmission, then already Buddha have already passed, right? So you have to, yeah, there's two benefit. This is what we called close transmission. Do you get what close transmission? Right? Yeah. Yes, this is what Brahmi script. Yes, actually Brahmi script, and actually so from here it is actually mentioned the Gupta script from the Gupta dynasty. So which here I underlined here. Okay, this one is the Tibetan script, exactly like today. This is ka, kha, ga, nga, cha, cha, ja. Anyone who understand the Tibetan here script, you can see exactly the same. Actually, this is the Indian Gupta script during the 6th to 7th century. So during the 6th to 7th century, that Gupta script is what Tibetans actively using today in the print. Same to same. Even the structures, you can read. I can read this one, each one. Same, very same to same. Yeah, actually Tibetan script. Na, pa, pa, ba, ma, ya, ra, la, wa, ha, sa, sha. Same to same. Different from Brahmin. Brahmi Lipi. I see. So this is how the mention in the text I found where mentioned the Gupta script, and one of the great scholar, a Tibetan scholar, we call that Amdo Gidin Chumpel. Okay, he's the scholar in the 19th century. Okay, not long, 100 years passed, and he mentioned this one in his book. So actually the Tibetan, this language, right, they revised, systemized the script, taking example from the Gupta script. This I mentioned, and when you read this one, same to same. So I try to make similarities here. So this is what the Tibetan script. All this script you will find here. I just take arrow. So same to same. Okay. If you see here ka, right, and here ka, is it visible? Otherwise you can see. So here this is ga, and here ga, same to same. And this is da, here arrow da, same. All these arrows same to same. If I make arrow many, it will become more net, right? So I just put the same different structures here. So actually this is the quoting from the Heart Sutra. Okay, so I just try to make you be aware of the similarity of this Tibetan script, okay, of the ancient Indian script, Gupta script. So similar, same to same. Okay, so this is between, here also mentioned between 6th to 7th century, but it is not clear here. Okay, you will get this in there. So this is how the transliteration dike dagi thupa duichik na. So after that I will go into translation. Okay, so this is the Tibetan script, and this is the transliteration. Okay, transliteration, and this is the translation, grammatical translation. Okay, once upon a time I heard thus. So when you do translation between the Tibetan and English, the English usually goes the backward. So these two languages are actually 85% opposite. Okay, so when you consider why this opposite happens, this is because of the dimension, attitude, the mentality works according to that directions. So Eastern people, usually the mentality works in its dimension from east to west. So those living in west, their mentality directions usually works into west to east. And because of that reason, language also follows in that direction. Okay, this is what mentioned by one of the language scholar from Italy. I don't actually remember that one. This talk was happened in front of His Holiness Dalai Lama, Mind and Life dialogue. There is a science Mind and Life dialogue in which the one scholar from the Italy, he mentioned. So difference between these mental dimensions. Why the English goes in that direction and Eastern goes in that directions. This is because of, and he put example on that one. You know, some of you know that example. So he draw a picture, one jar, bottle jar. I haven't shown here bottle jar picture, and then on that picture give the structure of the bodies, human bodies, right? Actually, that one's the tonic. One tonic, okay. In the label, outside the label of that jar, there mentioned the pictures. First mentioned a very small, weak man's picture, and then stronger. Okay. So when this picture actually is seen by those who are in Western and those who are in Eastern, especially for the children, okay, they react in a very different way. Those who look at that picture from the Eastern children, they think that if you eat this one, you will become weak. Or if you eat this one, you will become weak. They automatically consider it in that way. If that picture, right, observed by those who are in West, they usually think that if I eat this, I will become stronger. So this mentality, this is the one example. So in this Western and Eastern, their mentality dimension goes in east to west and west to east. Because of that reason, language also move from right to left, left to right. So this is the one reason, right? On that way, so English and Tibetan, because Tibetan is the Eastern language and English is the Western language, right? So you can check. So most of these language go in that directions. The reason is that their mentality, the people, the way they are thinking, okay, in that way. So from that reason, again you can conclude the Eastern people usually think more spiritualistic. Okay, Western people usually the mind itself is more like a materialistic. Go to the materialistic. Some scholars say if you input the Western way of learning and science and these things, it will destroy the spirituality of our Eastern culture. So we have to think in broad way, right? We have to check that one. So that's, yes. Yes.
Said that there, like when we translated this language, there was an 80 to 85% diversion in the diversion when we changed it to English, translated it to English. Sir, you told us about the mentality, but when we directly translate a text as such, does the meaning also change? And does it change only according to the perception, the difference in perception of Western and Eastern children, like you mentioned, or the meaning in itself is changing?
So yes, meaning also change, but meaning change according to its position. When you put the position of those terms, right? So I will come to the meaning later. Okay. So meaning later. So usually work is that way.
So it
Do you
is
have?
a structural change.
Yeah, structural, and their syntax will change. The order of the words in that part of speech will change. So if you want to become that one, you have to train that from the very young age. Otherwise, that language will remain in your brain always a second language. So your mother tongue, right? It will be the first language. So the second language can become your first language, but it should be trained from the very young age, from the before the 8 years old child. After the 8 years, how much proper you learn the language other than your mother tongue will not become your first language. This is how mentioned in text, right? Many expert scholars text. In Tibetan also they are mentioned. After 8 years, you think that after 8 years, if you learn the second language, it will always remain the second language. So this is the things there. So this all depends on your mentality, right? So when we are going to translate, usually, yes.
So what does na actually represent?
Na.
Yes, so what does it represent?
Na actually represents here if. It represents here a time. It's one kind of the particle in Tibetan. Particle.
Particle.
Particle, yes. Na is particle.
Na is particle.
Yeah,
Is
yes.
equivalent word is meaning is?
But here in et. So in, on, et. These are the prepositions you can use in the time and also place, right? The preposition of time. So it is a preposition of time here. Tuichikna, referring to the at one time, like that. Once upon a time, it should be like an open preposition. At one time. Okay. It's something like a open. At one time. So, and when you consider these particles according to the, when you compare this with the English have that preposition conjunctions, and these have little bit different from the Sanskrit. Maybe Sanskrit is very close to Tibetan, because Tibetan its grammar is also systemized, right, according to the Sanskrit. So from that angle, I think they are much more closed, right. From the Tibetan perspective, when you define these particles, particle itself doesn't show any meaning. It can become meaningful only when you connect with that its following and preceding verbs. Yeah. So in that way, here it shows the time. Whether it can be used for the place and different ways, but here it shows the time. Yeah. Like that. Yes. So now I come to the translation, Kagyur and Tengyur translation lineage. So translation, first thing is that when you translate, right, you must have to know the source language and target language, their dimensions, and you have to compare that dimension with your understanding and knowledge, right? How much your understanding of knowledge and works much better to translate that one. When you are translating, again, there are many definitions for the translation, right? So when you go translating, some verbally you can translate, grammatically you can translate. Okay, I will come to that one. The grammatical translation is the best one actually. So if you do the meaning translation, then it will very danger if you do the meaning translation. I will come to that point later. So first I will show here the translation happened in the Tibet, right, of those Buddha Vachan. So Kagyur and Tengyur translation lineage. Okay, so for here, so basically we count the main 4. Okay, 4. But here I compiled and mentioned 6 here. So Kagyur means the Buddha Vachan, Buddha's teachings, and Tengyur means the commentary on the Buddha's teachings. So there are 2 collections of the translation in Tibet, which we call that Kagyur and Tengyur. Kagyur is a Tibetan term. Ka means Buddha's teaching. Gyur means translation. Okay, translation of Buddha's teachings, and then Tengyur, translation of the commentary of Buddha's teachings. Tengyur. So in this category also include those those commentaries of the non-Buddha's teachings. Okay, where you include the languages and medicines, different texts are also included, right? The languages like Panini Vyakarana Sutra, right? And all these have been there. Kalapa Vyakarana Sutra and Saraswati Vyakarana Sutra, right? All these are included there in this one. Okay, so translation lineage. So here Narthang, actually these are the name of place where they do this translation in ancient time, right? During that time, one place name is called Narthang, another is Thelpa, and another one is Chone and Dege and this is called Peking and Lhasa. Lhasa. Lhasa is the capital city of Tibet, Lhasa. So here, Narthang. So according to that, I give here this was happened in 12th century, right? 13th century, 16th century, 16th century, 16th century, 19th century, like that. Okay. So when they are going to translate, do the translation of those Buddha's teaching and his commentaries, right? They takes time more than here 1227 to 1300. How many years takes to do all these translations, right? So it takes many years, and not only one canon, but different translation happens in a different place by the different sponsors, like that. Okay, and even during that time in Tibetan, the people usually, if there are two children born in one family, one children must dedicate to become a translator. Such things are there, such attitudes are there at that family. And if two children are born, and one must become monk, one children should be sent to become a monk, right? And one children should send to learn the translator. These are there. Almost every family have that dedications. It become the culture. These things are there. So because of that reason, in those ancient centuries, so many translators comes, right? And the children their purpose of that one is to become a translator. So these things are there, and to become a monk, like that. Okay, so these are the 6 different category of translation that happen in the Tibet. Okay, here Narthang, Tselpa, Cherne, Dege, Peking and Lhasa. So out of this, the main 4 is Narthang, Cherne, Dege and Peking. These 4. First one, third one, fourth one and fifth one. These are today what we call the main 4 lineage of the translations, right? And what mostly used today is on the base on Dege, fourth one. Dege translation is very popular today, right? That means the source actually comes from the Dege. So in the ancient, usually you find those first they do the translation on these leaves, that, right? There's a Chinese paper. The first paper actually invented by the China, right? Isn't it? Right? China, the first paper. And that one is very good property. It can sustain for years and years. Very good one, right? And they use that. Before that, it is taught that they use the leaves, palm leaves, and also the blocks. Blocks are there. So even today, the blocks you find broken one, some have the insected, right, eaten by the worms, and these things are there, recorded, right? And many of those, they have rebuilt again those blocks, and some have been destroyed because of, right, age difference, yes, poor maintenance, some have been lost, right? But anyhow, when they compare after, so some which have been lost in one lineage, they compare with the other lineage, and they compile all together, and they make one systematic, authentic one collections, and that collections today treated as the Dege one is the best one. So Dege collection, okay, we call that. And that Dege collections, if you see the history, it comes from the 7th century. 7th century, right, different lineage comes and there. So on the basis of that, you will find the different catalogs for that one. Many catalogs, different catalogs. But today, Dege and Chone. Where is Chone? Yeah, this one, third one. Dege and Chone. These 2 is considered as a good one. And more popular is Dege one today. So this is one diagram I show you. So here, Narthang. So these are the Tselpa, and other than Narthang and Tselpa, these are considered as the main source, right? Narthang. like that. Selpa is the main. What we today considered the Dege collection, actually it comes from the sources from Selpa, like that. Selpa, name of the place where the translation happens, Selpa, right? And from that the blocks will carry it to the another one, then they preserve in this way happens in this way. So these years are not clearly mentioned, but here this was again reconstruct in 14th century, right? And this is the name of the sponsor, actually in Tibetan, Gyaltse Thempangma Kagyur, Gyaltse Thempangma. So Gyaltse, actually it comes to the name of that sponsor. Thempangma means, so name of that block, okay, in that design it is called. And they reconstruct in 14th century, right? Some have been destroyed before that century, and they try to collect from the good one from these 6 sources, right? And they collect the block, and some block have been destroyed, they rebuild, right? Recurve, they curve the block again, and then they preserve it this way. In this way that happened from here, Kajur, for Kajur, right? And Chinese, and also there happened this how to say, cooperation with the Chinese translations, okay, yes, and this is in the 14th century itself. So when doing the translations in Tibet, at the same time the translation from the Chinese language also happened. When this translation happens, the Chinese scholars comes and one Tibetan scholars comes, okay. So after that they translated, then proofreader should be the king, okay, and king those who learned. And during that time in ancient, king must know Sanskrit, okay, Indian language. So Darikpa, we call that Darikpa. So king have to decide. If king is more confused, then he ordered another one scholars, right? So Tibetan, if it is translated only by the Tibetan scholar, then that will be rejected. There must include, if you are translating from the Sanskrit, then one Indian Pandit should be there when translating. So there is a terms in Tibetan we call Gyurching Shute Tenlapap, like that. 3 levels have to be passed to complete the translations. In the first level, when you involve in translating, right, if you are translating from Tibetan to English, there must be the English scholar and Tibetan scholar both. Otherwise, it is translated by Tibetan itself, then it will be rejected by the king. So very authentic way it was practiced during that time. Okay, so they invited many, as I mentioned here, 81, 82 something Pandits, right? So there are many translators included there. Okay, so the thing is that today we find those names after each translation of the text, right? After each translation of that text, in the end you will find the name of the Indian scholar, Tibetan scholar and king. So this is a very good way to find the name of those Pandits. So that collection was done in that way. So 82 Pandits, as I mentioned there, right? So these were collected in that way from the translated text, which is mentioned at the end of the text. Yes. So this authenticity was there, right? And when doing with the Chinese translation also. So when we consider when the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, when it carried to the Tibet, which one first come to the Tibet? Actually, not directly come from the first. It comes from the China. Okay, first come from the China, and after that, then again the King Songtsen Gampo he decided to do the authenticity of the revision and to do the authenticity of those already translated one by inviting directly from the Indian masters. So this decision was taken by the King Songtsen Gampo during the 7th century. So today we call that it was a very right decisions. Otherwise, only the Tibetan translation would be remain as it was there in the Chinese. It was already happened here mentioned, right? In that happened. But king decided to invite the scholars from the India itself, since the texts are being translating from the Sanskrit, right? So it is better to invite the scholars from the Sanskrit background from India, Bharat. So this happened there. And when they are translating from Chinese, and the Chinese scholars there. So usually we say that 4 main different languages are there. From they are translating into Tibetan, from Sanskrit, and from Prakritic, like that, that one, and then from the Konta language, something that Konta, right? Chinese. These different languages are there. Usually we count 4 languages when translating, right? And Konta, something like that. Even we credited that to the Afghanistan and something like this. Some scholars say, I not much know about history, but saying like that. So these texts even today exist in Tibetan. So these are under the Chinese authority today. Okay, so they are doing this rectifying those authenticity in the master copies by themselves, right? So they are not sharing with the other scholars, I think. I heard so, but I am not, no, they are not sharing with. Actually, those are many Sanskrit texts have been found. So they are not interrupting with the Indian scholars. I heard so, but how much authentic, I don't know that. So these are there, right? They are doing, yeah. So, yes.
If the translations were so authentic in the first place, then why were that many diversions that you mentioned?
In what diversion?
In translation,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
the translation was in itself so authentic, then why are there so many diversions that we find?
Can you example how, which diversions in translation?
You just said that there were a
Uh-huh.
lot of structural diversions. Later on, you said you will come to the meaning. Now, the thing is, you are telling me that there used to be 2 scholars
Ah.
from different languages. That the translation procedure was very authentic. Then, in that case scenario, why were there in the first place that many diversions if it was so authentic? The translation was so authentic.
To have a good authenticity in that translation, they invited from the different scholars.
But there are still diversions like you mentioned, right? Suppose like
Still diversion, how? I didn't, so you mean that Chinese?
No, not just Chinese. Like when you were talking about translation, like when you are translating a text, the procedure and the meaning stays authentic, and you're saying that the king used to reject it if it was not authentic enough. Then why do we find that?
Rejecting. Rejecting means that the king rejecting when it is only translated by the Tibetan. So here not we are saying that it is authentic. It is non-authentic. It is regarded as a non-authentic at that moment, right? It is something like that today what we call the proofreader, right? There must be the proofreader. Proofreader should be one who know the background, good knowledge about that both languages, right? So when we do the translation from Sanskrit to Tibetan, proofreader must be the scholar from the Sanskrit, who is from typically from the Indian Pandit, that one.
Reviewer, the one who reviews the translation.
One who views, review the translation, yes, to review. Fine.
I think excuse me, perhaps what she wanted to know was
Yes.
whether there was some cautious canonization
Uh-huh.
or selective appropriation.
Uh-huh.
I think this is what she wanted to know. Not diversion, of course, that could be there. But was there any intention? If it is because of lack of knowledge, that's fine. That's a human error or human
I think
human
intention was-
limitation. But if it is intentional, cautious canonization or selective appropriation, which we are selecting a specific text, we are interpreting, translating with a particular notion, having some biases also.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have some kind of thing those days?
Yes, of course. This is also there in that time, yeah.
That's why they were rejected. So the king found that
Yeah.
there were certain biases in the
Yeah.
translations.
And the thing is that
Human
when,
limitation.
and the thing is again that when the later readers, when the next generations, when they come, to make them feel more authenticity in their translations. That is again one purpose. If one knows that, oh, these are translated not only by the Tibetans, when they are translating these texts, They also they involve the Pandits, right, translated from the Sanskrit scholars also, Chinese scholars also. In that way, one may feel more authenticity in that one, right? And that one is purpose. That purpose is also there.
But then also saying for the authenticity, how much accuracy is present in the translation? How do we?
So accuracy, I will come to that one. There are three different kinds of translations. Okay. So this is how. Okay. So these are those different name of the place. So we are talking about this chart. So this is the chart. It shows where the translation take place in those times in past in Tibet, right? So along with the Tibetan translation from the Sanskrit, there also happened the translation from the different other languages. Like this slide shows Chinese Yonglu Kagyu translation, right? Tselpa, and here Wang Li translations and Li Wang translations. These are the Chinese translations. In which translations those scholars from the China involve, and possibly they are translating from the Chinese scripture. In that way, they give the name of those masters, plays in that way. Okay, and they mentioned the years in 16th century, 16 to 16, 11 to 11th century. So mostly the Chinese translations that happened during these centuries like this, right? And here I put here the question marks. This is the name of the one sponsor in that time, right? In 13th century, they are mentioned Gayen Thampa. So he also do the sponsor to reconstruct those Kagyu and Tengyur collections, right? To making blocks, right? To do these things. But these have been destroyed or something remain unclarity, right? So this the revival of this translation projects happen in different places. Some have been mentioned, only we can read in the books, but we cannot spot exactly the places, and even you don't find all those materials. So in that way, some have remained questionable like that. Okay, so that means it happens in different places in Tibet, because you know that in every family, so one children they dedicate for the translations, right? That happens centuries and centuries. So possibly the different projects will happen in different places, right? So in that way, so happens. And Dege, which is very popular today. So I give arrow right here, and these are connected from this translation, they compiled, they're connecting. Then when they reviving, right, revising those authenticity in the blocks and this, so they connect to each others in this way. So today, Chone and Dege, these two become the one authentic one today, right? In this way, Narthang, right? In this century, you can read about this, okay? And this is about the Tengyur. Tengyur means translation on the commentary of Buddha's teachings, right? In this way, collected by the Chim and his edition on Narthang Tengyur. So Chim is regarded as the one of the great master in Tibetan, a monk who is treated as the very expert in Abhidharma text, Abhidharma, right? Even today, so all schools learn his text, right? Chim Jampeyang. So even his name is given as the Manjushri, Chim Manjushri, like that. It's very creative one, and under his supervision, there happened this translation, and these things are there. So that is called Narthang, on the base of the Narthang. Out of those four main translation plays, based on the Narthang, maybe Chim have supervised, right? May lead their projections, right? And Shalu is also the one popular one during the time of maybe in the 5th century, around that one, right? And after that it is carried in the 13th century. Shalu Tengyur, yes, those found in the central Tibet, Lhodak, Nyal and Dako. So Lhodak, Nyal, Dako, these are the name of the places where the translation of those commentaries happened. Okay, yeah, these things, and they take authenticity from the Tselpa, so which one translated the Buddha's teachings, right? Same the organizer doing the translation of the Buddha's commentary also. So in this way they are connecting like this, right? So in this way all these are showing in that way, right? Okay, and there Sethang Tengyur. Sethang is also the name of the place where it happens, the translation of those commentaries, right? Yes. Usually we say that in Tibet there are many centers, translation centers. Okay, translation centers are there. So where many scholars they invited from the China, right, in India, and then do translations, keeping blogs like that. This happened something like a factory, what we call today, company like that. Can we imagine like that happened there? And this is also in 16th century. I gave your names. I have not go detail, right? These are just for the picture. If you go read, then there are many, right? Just for your idea for this one, okay? And Dege and the Chone. So finally these four are the main we treated: Peking, Narthang, Dege and Chone. These four collections are today, right, available. And from these four, Dege and Narthang is treated as bit good collection. Okay, good collections. And in our monastic traditions usually follow the collection from this Dege. Okay, the printed one like this. And these are the collection of the name of those collections from the Kagyu. Okay, in the Kagyu, so these are the serial numbers, I think. So 1 to 7A, 8 to 4. In this serial, in between this serial number, right, collection of those Kagyu, the Buddha's teachings, you will find this text, Vinaya text, right, Pragya Paramita text, Avatamsaka text, Ratnakuta and Sutra, Tantra, right, Pratantra, Kalchakra, Dharani. All these texts will be, you will find between these index numbers, and total, the total number of the texts give in these numbers here. So tantric text you will find something like 468. This is talking about not commentary. This is talking about the Buddha's teachings. So in minor traditions also accepted the Tantra as taught by the Buddha, right? So there are many the other traditions they don't accept, right? So from minor perspective, Tibetan usually we call the Vajrayana tradition, right? So basically 85-90% is based on the Vajrayana Tantric practiced. So where we count the Buddha's actual words of Tantric teachings, something collection of the 464, 468 and 471. Actually this number collected from the based on the Nalanda University where they works on that base, their collections. Okay, in this way you will find like this. And also this one is the collection of the commentaries on Buddha's words. So in this way, right, here Strogana. So you will find in between 1109 and 1176, 79. Between this serial number, right, the collection this is the number of catalog, the serial catalog. Between this catalog index number, you will find the commentary on this one, like that. And how many commentaries are there? You will find from here on, right, Strogana, it's the Sanskrit name here. There are 71 commentaries on that one. You will find. So in this one include commentaries by the Tibetan scholars, Indian scholars, right, different you will find like this. Okay, so here Tantra, this is one collection, 2606 commentaries on Tantra, right, and these are not regarded what today's scholars. Okay, actually these are collection of those before the 18th, 19th centuries like that. Okay, those collections are counted here. Not today's scholars, not today's like Geshe like that. Okay, these are not counted. And Pragya Paramita, Madhanika, all these are like that. Right, Sutantra, Chitramatra, Abhidharma, Vinaya, Jataka, Lekha, right, Parikatha, Pramana. So which is very treated as small. Shabda Vidya, Chittiska Vidya. So these are the texts on the grammars, right? Shabdavidya, like that, right? Shabdavidya, you will find the text. Actually, these are the Sanskrit texts which have been translated into Tibetan also. So here, the commentaries you will find 37 like this, okay, commentaries on that way. So these are exist in Tibetan itself.
So that Chikitsa Vidya is a medical book or?
I think this is a medical text. Yeah, medical text. And for you, if you want to find this, actually these are the translated from the Sanskrit, right? Exist in the Tibetan. Yeah, medical text. Vinaya Pitak, yes, Vinaya Pitak. But this order is make something very different one. So I collect one. So here Vinaya.
Vinaya is not only Vinaya, related, but Vinaya means
Maybe it is related with the Vinaya, just Vinaya
discipline and
over here.
related to any kind of disciplining for the purpose of education. What is called in faculty of education in Vishwakant Vinaya.
I see. Chitsa Vidya, right? Chikitsa Vidya, and here Shilpa Vidya, Nitish Shastra, and here Vibha Vidya and Atisha's coal collections and Suchilipi, something like that. Suchilipi here doesn't mention, but they are total 3,356 and 61 something compiled there, right? So this is one collection of those Tengyur. All these are based on the Dege collection, okay? Dege collection. So here, so these are those Indian Buddhist treatises belonging to the following 5 fields and their Tibetan commentaries. These are the 5 main commentaries which is actively learning in today's monastic curriculum. Okay, so these are Prajnaparamita, Madhyamika, Abhidharma, Vinaya and Pramana. So these 5 are actually called the 5 major treatises, right? These have to be learned in monastic curriculum in Tibetan translations based on the commentaries by Indian scholars and Tibetan scholars, like that. You have to learn on the basis of that one. So when you're counting, you will find here Indian root text and commentaries, right, and their quantity, and this is the Tibetan commentaries quantities. So this is the collection of the Indian commentaries and the Tibetan commentaries, like that. Okay, so on the basis of the Prajnaparamita, you will find between this index number 38 and 300 something commentaries here. So these are all the quantity of the Indian scholars you will find, right, in Sanskrit, from Sanskrit to Tibetan in this way. So the Madhyamika is too many here, 157 such Madhyamika text, right. So those many of those, the root text Sanskrit has been lost, right, but exists only in Tibetan and some other languages. Not yet all translated, right, in other languages, only exist there, something like that, yeah. And Vinaya, Pramana have very rigorously learned, so that's why it's 500 commentaries on that one. Pramana, which is a 4th chapter, very interesting one, Pramana by Acharya Dharmakirti, which is learned in the monastic curriculum as a main subject in many monasteries, like that, yeah. And some of the particular Indian treatises and their Tibetan commentaries. So again, this is again collection from that one. So these are their Indian root text, right? Pramana Vartika. These are again rigorously learning. So here, so I am not got here. So these are the some text which are very actively learning again. Pramana Vartik also. Pramana Vartika.
Logic test?
It's a logic test, yes. Pramana Vartika by the Acharya Dharmakirti. So his root text. So Acharya Dharmakirti has actually composed 7 texts on the Pramana, which we call the 3 as the main text, right, and the 4 as a secondary text. There are total 7 texts.
What about the Madhyama, Vakara?
Madhyamaka Avatara, it is composed by Acharya Chandrakriti. Acharya Chandrakriti.
What about
Now, what about? Yes, it is about the middle way path.
Yeah.
Madhyamaka school, middle way.
Middle.
Yeah, middle way, middle path.
Madhya.
Yes. So this is the, actually in Tibetan context we usually say that Madhyamika Avatara is the meaning commentary on the Mool Madhyamika Karika. Mool Madhyamika Karika composed by the Arya Nagarjuna, and Madhyamika Avatara is the meaning commentary on the Mool Madhyamika Karika. Yes, Madhya, Mool is the root text. Mool Madhya Maka Karika. Mool Madhya Maka Karika. Exactly. So in Tibetan, Matsawa Sherap, it is recalled. Yes. This text is the main text actually. Yeah. And this one, Abhisama Alamkara. And there's some says it is composed by the Arya Asanga, some says it is composed by Maitreya, right? There is one Tucci, the one great scholar from the Japan. In Tibetan, Japan we call Nyong. In Tibetan, Japan is called Nyong. Okay, so Japan.
Because the name of Japan is Nippon, that they call the Japanese.
Nippon.
Nippon.
In Tibetan, say Nyong.
And from them,
Oh, so here, one scholar from that Japan says that the Arya Asanga who meditate on the Arya Maitreya for 12 years, right? And after the 12 years, he have the direct audience with the Arya Maitreya. Since then, he asks his doubt, right? Learn from the Arya Maitreya. So because of that reason, in Tibetan context, Arya Asanga is called Jamba Gompo. Jamba Gompo. Gompo means the one who protect you. So Jamba Gompo is the synonymous terms for the Arya Asanga. So because of that confusion, some says Abhisama Alamkara is composed by Arya Maitreya, some says by Arya Asanga, different connotations are there.
what about Patni Vyakaran Sutra and Kavya Darshan? These are the poetics.
So these are the Sanskrit text. Actually, Saraswati Vyakarana Sutra, Chandra Vyakarana Sutra, Kalapa Sutra, Panini Vyakarana Sutra, Kavya Darsha, all these are translated via Sanskrit text.
And
They have been translated in Tibetan. And Kavya Darsha is very actively learning in, yes, there are 3 chapters, is very actively learning all this text. So, thing is that in Tibetan, all these Sanskrit language texts have been translated in Tibetan, but today, even today, the scholars, not the new generation one, the old one, scholars even today in Tibet, they haven't even read, they don't know the Devanagari script, but they know the Sanskrit. Their pronunciation may be different, but they learn Sanskrit in the Tibetan script, because all these have already been translated in Tibetan, like that. Buddhist philosophy text. Yeah, actually it is in Sanskrit. Actually this is in Sanskrit, Vajra Dhamkiti. Actually this is in Sanskrit, and this is translation. So one interesting thing about the Acharya Pramana Vartika, the root text, the main Sanskrit texts have been lost. There are 4 chapters, only the first chapter and its commentary is there. And after the Rahul Sangatain went to Tibet, right, and he carried that, the only 1 chapter he found, and after that he revised that again. Which institution that did, I don't know. It is mentioned in the history, in Tibetan history. Rahul Sangatain did very hard work on this one, reviving this text, Sanskrit text on Pramana Vartika. The latter 3 chapters have been revived from the already translated commentary in Tibetan. They do the translation from Tibetan scholars. Rahul Sangatain also they revive that text again. So now all these 3 chapters have been back translated in Sanskrit also. Now it is available like that. The real third chapter is the first chapter. Only that one is exist in Tibet in Sanskrit. Otherwise, all other 3 chapters have been lost. Some burned, some destructions have happened in this way. So these are mentioned in the Ravi Sankatayan's story written in the Tibetan. This is mentioned. I read. So this one. In this way, you will find many such stories about these things. Okay. So now I come to the translation. Okay. Now I come to the translation. So in Tibetan, so usually you have to now consider the translation in 3 ways. Translation, okay, grammatical translation in Tibetan called Dagyur, grammatical translation, and phonetic translation, which we call the transliteration, right? Thegyur, and then Dhengyur, meaning translations. Only 3 kinds of translation is accepted. Okay, all the translations usually included under these 3 categories. When you do the literal translations, right, from the source text to the target one, it must be based on these 3: grammatical translation, phonetic translation, and meaning translations. Okay, so I will come to each one. Okay, there's a little bit. So here, grammatical translation focus on preserving the original linguistic structure, maintaining the grammatical form, syntax, and even phonetic elements. So when you do the grammatical translations, sometimes it is very necessary to focus on the phonetic syllabic translations. In the source language, if the term comes one syllabic word, it is better to find some similar terms in the target language which also have a one syllabic word. So this makes you more acceptable to write when you are stanza, right? Yes, stanza, to keep the rhythm of the meters in stanza writing. So to keep meters acceptable, suitable in the meter in the stanza writing. So for that purpose, when you are translating from the source text to the right target one, you have to also keep attention on the syllabic. How many syllables in the root text, target source text, like that. If you put example like that, pramartha satya, right, samadhi, like shunyata. So shunyata, there are 3 syllables, right? So in Tibetan, again there are 3 syllables, tongbanyi, 3 syllables. So in this way, pramartha satya, right? And at that time you can also go to the grammatical translations. So in Tibetan we say dandam dempa. So keep the same syllabic for that translation, and at the same time you are focusing each term's grammatical translations, like that. Like samadhi. Samadhi in Tibetan we say tinge zin. So again here 3 syllables. Since the Sanskrit also have a 3 syllables, samadhi, right? In Tibetan also 3 syllables, tinge zin. So samadhi. So and again you have to connect with the each term's grammatical meaning with that syllables. So samadhi, when I consider from the Tibetan translation tinge zin, which literally means to tinge zin, to hold deep inside by mind, to hold deep inside by mind. This is what the literal translations, grammatical translations. So this is what we call samadhi. When one engaged in the deep samadhi, actually his mind, right, abide into the deep holding of one point, right? So this is how translated in Tibetan, keeping attention on the syllabic also, samadhi tinge zin. So this is very important. This is called the grammatical translations. So when you do the grammatical translations, one important thing is that you also have to do the syllabic similarities. You have to keep the similar meters in syllabic also. This will help you to translation when you do the stanza writing, keep meters, rhythms in that way. And in that way again you have to check the masculine gender and feminine gender, neuter gender also. This have to check again. If there is a term, the similar synonymous terms you find for the table is something like te, ta is a masculine, t is a masculine letter actually. When you translating the source language, right, a target language for the table, you have to find in the target language there are many synonymous terms for the table. Okay, so in target language you also have to find something that begins with the masculine letter. You have to choose that one. In that way you have to see syllabic orders also and their gender order, gender of the letters also when you do the grammatical translation. These two are very important. Do you get syllabic translation? Yes?
If I'm not wrong, Tibetan is a tonal language. But what do you mean?
But when you see this translation in English, suppose ultimate truth, Brahma Satya, right? So when you compare this with the translation in Tibetan, so Tibetan is much more close with the Sanskrit, Pram Arth Satya. So Pram, Arth, Satya, all these three are literally there in the three syllable, Dam, Demba. Yes, Dhan means earth, Dam means Pram, right? Demba means Satya. So here, very systematic syllabic, right, in these translations. But in English, you call that ultimate truth, right? In ultimate truth, the term comes, no, ultimate means something that the final, right, and truth only. There doesn't comes the grammatical translation of earth and Pram, right? But we use that, and even it is very popular now. One can understand easily. But this is, if you do translation, you must see each syllabic terms with that closeness to the each terms. This is grammatical. This is very important to do that. And at the same time, you have to find the gender base, masculine and neuter and feminine letters to put. If you don't, then you have to find dictionary, right? Today many dictionaries. You are going to translate that one. You have to find the similar, which is concordant with the this gender and syllable. In this way, you have to find grammatical translations. So translating using this method would keep Sanskrit grammatical constructions intact when translating into Tibetan from Sanskrit, even if this result in somewhat awkward or non-idiomatic Tibetan. So at the very first time when they are translating, right, it seems very awkward during that time. But the translators, they keep that one, and after centuries, the readers, the practitioners use that terms, and that become a familiarized. You don't have to see the familiarized first time. So many translators today see that. So when you do the grammatical translations, the word sounds very awkward. No, we have to find another one word. You don't have to go that one. It will come later. The words will become familiarized in your right mental as much as you practice. It will be it takes time to accustom, but you have to do translation grammatically, syllabically and gender wise. Yes, this is the 2 points important in the grammatical translation. So this is what, so they neglect, those translators, when this awkward happens, right, idiomatic happens, they neglect, keep that one. Yeah. This approach is particularly valued for translating sacred text where the original linguistic form is considered to be more accurate than its implicit implications. So here it says that when you do meaning translation and grammatical translation, I say grammatical translation is much more accurate than meaning translation. I will come to that one. Okay. To carry the spiritual significance of beyond just semantic meanings, pragmatic, parametric, semantic. These meanings helps you in grasping more accuracy in the idea and meaning in the source text, right, to transmit in the target text. But again, there is a problem, right? One cannot grasp. If you share that more than 50%, then again it becomes this includes under the not accurate translations. According to Tibetan masters, they say if you fall more than 50%, considering in that way when you're translating, right, that is, though it seems to be a very good translation, but again it is considered as a non-accurate translation. So I will come to that one. So this is the grammatical translation, okay. I will come to that one. Now here phonetic transliteration, okay. So transliteration, phonetic transliteration, which we call Thegyur in Tibetan, okay. So here transliteration, also known as the phonetic translation, is a method of converting text from the one writing system to another by representing the sound of the original language, right. Now here the one important thing is that you have to see the gender of the terms. Yeah, in phonetic translation also relates with the gender of the terms, okay, masculine, feminine, this you have to see. You have to observe that one also. If you lost that part in the transliterations, again you will lose some part of the accuracy in the transliteration also. There are two kinds of transliterations, okay. Anyway, yeah. Script, this approach is valued for preserving the pronunciation and phonetic structure of the source language rather than translating meaning. So meaning is not important again. When you do the transliteration, when you do the grammatical translation, meaning is not important. Okay, yes, of course you can do meaning translations, but it is better to grasp the grammatical. Okay, now come to, okay, before we go to the meaning translations, I am going to explain this one, 4 kinds of meaning, okay. So this is something important to know when do the meaning translation. So here, actually you have already know about this one, explicit, implicit, definitive, interpretable, right. So explicit meaning, implicit meaning, right, definitive meaning, interpretable meaning, they are interchangeable actually, interchangeable, okay. So here explicit meaning refers to what the text directly states, right, the literal surface level of content that is immediately apparent to readers. So meaning can be changed, okay. So it all depends on, now it again comes to the Buddhavachan Agam, that one, that's connections. First I will say you, so when you considering or the meaning of that particular sentence or word or phrase, a paragraph, right. So suppose one of you, 2 or 3 of you reading the same passage, paragraph, but your level of understanding will be different, and that difference comes because of your mentality, your understanding, intellectual power. Because of that reason, the meanings that you grasp reading the same passage by the 2, 3, right, again it comes different. If you do the meaning translations, right, since you 3 have grasped in different, right, context, the meaning also comes in different. If the meaning comes in different from that source text, if that meaning is, right, honestly not exactly how you grasp in that source text, then you have did very big mistake there when you're translating. So meaning translation is always treated as a not accurate. So grammatical translations, we have to go grammatical translations, right. In grammatical translations, in accordance with the structure of that orders and words, the intelligent one can grasp according to his mentality from that. So for example, I gave you the translation of Heart Sutra. Okay, in Heart Sutra you may find that when translating the essence of that 5 skandhas, right, aggregates, they are mentioned no form, right, no nose, no ear. Instead of that, when they are translating, they should label some, right, directly say no nose. Even translation directly says no nose, no form. If someone who think directly, what is the heart's the, yes, yeah, why not? The form is exist, right? Nose is exist. But here it says the no form, no nose. Why? It seems directly something like wrong, right? If you consider. But that is important. The translator do only the grammatical translation there. He doesn't go through the meaning. So meaning should be comes according to your mentality when you read that one. So Chittamatra, right, there are 14 systems. When Chittamatra explained no forms means form doesn't exist, right? Different form, different substantial from the mind, right? And Madhyamika explained that form doesn't exist by its own way, though it is out of consciousness, mind, but it doesn't exist by its own way. So different labels are there, right? In that way, they say no form. So meaning can differ according to one's understanding. So thing is that you have to translate as the literal structure is there. That is important. So comparing with these three translation, meaning translation, grammatical translation and phonetic translations, the best one is grammatical translations. So that is why those translators are called Dayur. Da means actually the grammar. So in Tibet, in some textbooks, you will find the misunderstanding on that one. Da means actually sound. So Dayur means, some may thought that Dayur means transliteration, sound translation, phonetic translation. Actually it doesn't mean that. Da here means actually grammar. Da Rigpa means soundology. Is there terms like that? So study of sound. Yes. Study of sound means phonology and study of sound. I am going to the Tibetan context. So Da Rigpa means learning of the systematic application of sound. Yes. So anyway, we just leave that using terms. We have to understand grammatical translation now. In grammatical translation, you have to, so from the Tibetan context, right, it is the language where you find only 3 parts of speech. In English we have 8 parts of speech, right? In Tibetan only 3 parts of speech. 3 parts of speech, there is naming terms, naming, attributive and expression. Only these 3 parts. Naming. When naming comes, naming should be not only the stable one. Even the action is also naming. Suppose you are having some cup of tea. For that action, what we call in English drink, right? Drink. Drink is the naming term, but it is a naming term for something movement. When we say table, again it is a naming term, something that which is non-movement, stable one. But both are naming. Action. Right. Whether it is term for the movement or stable one, again it is naming. So there is naming. So there is only one. This include under the one category, naming term, nominative. I don't exactly know that. Can we say nominative term or not? Naming term. In Tibetan translation, we call that naming. Naming word. Naming word. Naming word. Noun. But noun, we cannot say drink noun, right? From the English context. So that is a naming. Okay, naming term. Okay. And then after that comes the attribute. So attribute means something that qualify or modify, quantify, like that. So when you modify the naming term, that become attributive. So whether it is the action or noun, we then in Tibetan context we don't separate terms for the adjective and adverb. Okay, actually the adjective is the qualifying term for the non-stable thing, right? Non-stable phenomena. And adverb is something qualifying for the movement, something which is moving, right? So every phenomena, any existence, that must be in two state. That must be in the existence of two state. Two state. That must be in a movement, or that must be in a stable, right? That must be in a movement, that must be in a stable. In these two ways, you give a name. Only four, right?
No, Sanskrit is different. Okay, because Akhyat is you have above. So please don't compare unity.
So in Tibetan, we explain it in this way. There are only three parts of speech. Naming term, which includes the movement and no movement, and then attributive, which includes, when you compare with English, it is like a adverb and adjectives. There is no different term. Both are attributive. Attributive to the movement, attributive to the no movement, stable. And then when combining, when they become a group, right? They group, that become an expression finally. In expression, to show the correct idea between the expressions, right? That is done by the particles. And particle is something like in English preposition and conjunction. There is no such terms, preposition and conjunctions. Only we give the particle, we say particle. This is what English translation particle, right? In Tibetan translation from particle, we call sikte. Te means something that joined, previous one and following one, preceding one and following one. Connect by that, which is like a preposition and conjunctions. There is no such different explanation in Tibetan. We say only particle te. The te particle itself doesn't have meaning. It becomes meaningful only when it is connected with the preceding and following words. Then they become a meaning, and then they change the meaning of preceding one in that way. In that way, it become a jopa, expression. So only these three parts there. So there is no idea about sentence in Tibetan. Sentence, there is no sentence in Tibetan. If you write Tibetan, actually you can write from top to the end in all scriptures. Usually you don't find the paragraphing like that. You don't find. All are connected in one line. Okay, all are connected in one line, like a Sanskrit, that one line very long, but you have to know the exact visarga and that these things, right? Yeah. From that you have to analyze. Actually, all are interconnected. So from that there is no full stop. There is no sense like a sentence. No sentence in Tibetan. Technically, no sentence in Tibetan. There is only used particles. To end, there is different particles there. To continue, there are different particles there. From there, you can understand continue. To end, there is different particles there. From that, you can understand. Yeah, the include meaning is stop here. There is no like full stop, grab like that. But in one line, we connect it, right? So this is the character of the Tibetan language, right? And which is also very close to the Sanskrit, I think. Sanskrit, right? Yeah, Sanskrit. So when do grammatical translations, the most important thing when you do, you have to focus on is particle. In every language, right, there are some substitute terms for the preposition and conjunctions. As in Tibetan, that is particles. So you have to focus on that one when do grammatical translations, right? You have to make a list of those preposition and conjunctions, and you have to compare that preposition in that language. How does that work? Okay. Otherwise, there's only two: naming terms and attributive. Only these two. So if you understand the function of the particles or preposition and conjunction in other language, in your language, you compare, then you can do. It's a very quick way to understand. to do a accuracy in grammatical translation. And grammatical translation is also best comparing with the meaning translation and transliterations. So is there time? Now I come to the transliteration.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so meaning translation, meaning changes, right? Explicit meaning. Okay, I'm not going detail in that one. So meaning changes, right, according to a different context. Yes.
In the ending, it would have written the implicit meaning often requires structural and doctrinal knowledge to fully appreciate.
Where?
The last.
Here, implicit meaning often requires cultural and doctrinal knowledge. Yes.
But sir, about the doctrinal one here,
Doctrinal means
how are we treating doctrinal as a means to an end or an end in itself to understand the implied meaning of something?
doctrinal means here from the philosophical base in Tibetan. We read the Siddhants, right? Vibhashika, Swatantrika. They have their own different text describing that, right? If you read the Vibhashika text, right, you are maybe much familiar with the Vibhashika text also, and you have also familiar with the Chittamatra text, and you also familiar with the some idea of Madhyamika text also. If you have that idea, right, after that when you go the reading the Heart Sutra, no form, no, at that time the meaning explicit and implicit that creates in your mentality will be different. If those who didn't read only Vibhashika text, right, haven't read about the Chittamatra philosophical text, Madhyamika text, and his conception in your mind when reading the Heart Sutra will be different, giving implicit and explicit. That is what we call doctrinal knowledge. Yeah. You get? So doctrinal knowledge also works there in to some people the sentence may give you an implicit meaning, but it is not necessary to give implicit meaning to the all the readers for that same passage. It may give you an explicit meaning to some readers, right, and that explicit meaning may become an implicit meaning to some other readers from that same passage. Yes, and for some readers may it become interpretable. They don't accept, no, not this meaning should not be of this passage, right, something other meanings there, interpretable. So interpretable, definitive meaning, implicit, these four meanings are interchangeable according to one's understanding or mentality, and that comes from how much you expose with the doctrinal culture understanding, right, in that way it changes. So because of that reason, if you do the meaning translation, only your idea will transmit, right, on the target language. So those who read from that will lead in your understanding, lead through your understanding. If your understanding was wrong at the very first time, then he will also wrong. So that is why meaning translation is not accurate. Okay, now come to the literal translation, phonetic translation. Meaning translation, here meaning translation. Meaning translation focus on conveying the essential meaning and intent of the source text, right? Meaning translation in Tibetan, in the Tibetan tradition involves a sophisticated understanding of how text convey significance at multiple levels. Okay, so it works in multiple levels, different mental dimension. Yes. So okay, anyway, this for the workshop. Okay, I will, before that I come to the one conclusion for transliteration. Okay, so transliteration, do you know the meaning of Devanagari? Have I told you that before? No, right? When I explaining that Gupta script, no, right? So Devanagari, so in Tibetan context you will find three different explanation on that script, Devanagari. So Dev means the one high realized, being, Dev, the one good, high realized being, right? And you can consider that as the Dev, Deva, God, Goddess, they are Dev, okay, Dev. And Nagari is the name of the village, place where where those the high realized beings lived. And this script actually developed by those high realized beings living in that Nagari there, right? Because of that reason, this lipi is called Devanagari lipi. This is one explanation. This is one explanation, okay? And another one is that some says in Devanagari place called you will find in the Gujarat, okay? In Gujarat, once there was a place, Nagari, where very high expert realized beings are living, right? And actually from their practice, gradually that lipi evolved into other places. Because of that reason, it is called Devanagari. This is the second explanation. I don't know whether such names exist today in the Gujarat, but in the Tibetan text it is written like that, okay? So, and the third one is very interesting one, third one, which is very related with the literal translation, okay? So, third one, it is called Devanagari. Nagari means actually the structure of the subtle level of your nerve system. In your nerves, anatomy of human body is much more than understanding what the modern science, okay? So, if you go to the tantric, right? So, when you do the tantric meditations, actually you have to visualize the deities, and their deities come into non-duality with your meditation, and they in each part of your body, we call mandala, right? There is the place for those deities in the nervous systems, and in that nervous system, nerves, there is a structure like the letters structure. Actually, first I am saying structure. That structure is called Nagari. Nagari means again the place of those deities. When you are conceptualizing, it automatically evolved in your body. So, like a main chakra, that the right, Sauma in Tibetan we call that. So, main chakra. Actually, in our human anatomy, right, that exists. But for the ordinary one, if you don't practice, that nerves will not be evolved. It will always missing there. If you do practice, right, in high level, that evolve, that open chakras. There are many they are in explanation, right? We call the 8 something, that the 4 points here, 1 point here, 2 here, and 1 point at the from here, right? And this way. So this will be open. So when they open, on the base of that one, other nervous systems, they become the place of that your particular visualization of deities. When they become that Nagari in your nerve systems, they actually their structure actually look like a letter. So Devanagari letter actually take an example from that structure inside your nerves, and those Devs, right, and they do that structure. What we writing today as Devanagari in Hindi, right, that is a very big caution. That is the letter developed cursive writing. So if you go to the real source of the Devanagari lipi, it must look like a nerves structure in your body. Okay, so Dham lipi, Brahm lipi, right, Brahmin lipi. If you go to the old text, right, there are some like this, sticks like that, and sticks. There's something like that. Okay, actually these are not just ordinary writing. These are actually depicted by those high devas, realized beings, through their practice, right, to have that deities in their nervous body, actual place, Nagari, and that is depicted there. So when you do recitation, the mantras, so because of that importance in Tibetan, so when translating the mantras, right, they don't going to translate grammatical translations. That is the reason. Okay, now I come to that point. Because of that reason, when they do the translation of mantras, they usually keep, suppose the mantra in Heart Sutra, Teatha Gadde Gadde Para Gadde Para Samgadde Bodhisattva, right? The same little translation they made. Because these mantras usually resembling the visualization of that deity, right, inside, and they should be same. You have to recite the same pronunciation and structure. You have to visualize to have that place in your nervous system when you meditate. If that place is different from how it there, then deities will not being dissolved in your body. You haven't experienced the non-duality in that one. For that reason, they do a transliteration. Yes, okay. And then again question comes in Tibet. Okay. If this is the reason there, then this is a Tibetan script. Right? These questions are there. This is the Tibetan script. Then you have to use the Devanagari script. This question comes. Then when this question comes, the many scholars have replied there, no, this is not Tibetan script. This is actually the script evolved from the Devanagari itself, Gupta script. So because of that reason, again they answer in that way. You will find these stories in the explanation of the transliteration. So because of that reason, when you do transliteration, mantras and this, usually we keep the same script. Because Devanagari, the place and structure of that place, that script is the structure of that place in your nerve system, subtle level, right, when you recite. So this is the third explanation, which is related with the transliteration. You get? This is how taught in tantric text. Yeah. So this is just for the, now this is the translation, but I have shared only this one. So this for the translation, I am a student, right? So when you do translation, subject should be at the first position and the remaining predicate will be changed. Because Tibetan and English is totally opposite direction, right? So here, I should be here again, same. I, here, na. I put number 1 here, right? Na. The subject should be always the first position. Then after that, you have to go the reverse direction. M comes at the R, last one. This is M. And the second one, R, is this one. And student is this one. Na Lungtok Sherap. In Tibetan, I am a student. Right? So if you read the Tibetan one as in English, it becomes I am a student, like that. It goes reverse. Right? So this is when you compare between the English and Tibetan, almost 85-90% accurate when you do translation between Tibetan and English. So next example also, so I just up and down here. I am a student. I just revised, right? I put that sentence over here again. So again here. So both of these works in the same direction now, right? Na Lungtok Sherap. I am a student according to the English. So here, I am a student, forward, right? So in Tibetan it goes reversed, like that. So this is almost 85-90% in between Tibetan and English. So only thing is that this is the basic concept. Okay. So after that, then you have to know this similarity, functionality of those particles, conjunction, prepositions in other language. So focusing on grammatical translation is much more important than focusing on meaning translation. That's fine. Okay, thank you.